I, I was just checking the Stream Deck. If you don't have a Stream Deck pedal for your podcast, it can change everything. I've got so much energy this morning because I got up 6:45 this morning. Actually, I was up a little bit earlier, but I got a chance to be able to take my little dog Ziggy on a walk. We're going to be talking about him and the business lessons that you can learn from that little ball of joy, is what we would call it. But first, a couple station identification. I am wearing my High Fives Foundation t-shirt. They sponsor the podcast. This is an incredible, incredible foundation. Roy Tuscany, he helps spinal cord injury victims to blast through all of the barriers and have them back doing action sports, living the life that they love, and being able to have an incredible message like he has. So you need to check that out. But also, too, I haven't talked to you guys, my hairdressers, my salon owners, in a long time. I went out on this journey when I started the podcast, and I said, look, I'm not going to make it a hairdresser podcast. I'm not going to make it a salon owner podcast, which I haven't. I just wanted to go out, and I wanted to make sure that we go after some of the most iconic people in the world to interview them. We've got Inchstones, which is today. That's what we're doing. We go through the corresponding proverb for the corresponding day. And then I also have a show that is called You Have to Meet My Friends. And I go live and I call my friends randomly, and they have no idea that they're live on the podcast until they actually are on. And it's so much fun. But I just got a chance to speak at the Masters of Balayage Hero Retreat. And I don't do a ton of speaking in the professional beauty industry, but I got a chance to. And I was around the people that I had been around for 30 years. And I just want to give a huge shout out to you guys. I also have a course for salon owners, for hairdressers, for barbers, for barbershop owners, honestly. And what I did is I just took my 30 years and the experience that I had, which I was very, very fortunate to be around some great people and to be able to build teams and build that up. And we have that course. It's available. You could click the link. It is unreal. The things that were laid down, the production side from my brother Brad, and also just the content to be able to, if you want to have, you want to build a sustainable brand, you want to build a culture, you want to have processes and procedures, you want to have innovation, the ability to adapt immediately and continue to grow and sustain that growth, that course, you need to check it out. So, as you could tell, I got a lot of energy inside of me. I am excited about today because for me, it was a big one because I went on that walk this morning with my little dog. And as I was walking him, and he's got this leash that, stretches out and you could kind of push the button and it stops him. But we made a decision to get a dog on vacation, which I wouldn't suggest this for any of you, but my wife and I did. You see, I was, in the midst of vacation. We take July and we go up to Park City. We have a home up there, and we got a chance to be able to spend some time there. And we spend the whole month of July, and we kind of relax, and we just rejuvenate ourselves. And I was relaxed. I was in the pocket. My wife calls me, and I think it's her, but it's my son's voice, Maddox. And he says, Daddy, can we get a puppy? And I'm so relaxed that my defenses are down, and I'm like, oh, sure, son, let's, I'm definitely open to it. But getting a puppy on vacation is probably not the greatest thing that you can do. And, but we were excited. The kids said, we'll feed him, we'll walk him, we'll pick up his poop. And, we all know how that one goes. But as I was going through, it's been about 2.5 months, I was walking Ziggy this morning, and what God told me was, I'm going to tell you every single thing that you would need to know in business through this little puppy this morning. And I was like, man, God, you better deliver on this. And he said, I'm going to tell you through Proverbs 28. And so as I walked, I was starting to, he was giving me different little downloads of what, in business, how this little puppy that's so cute, but is ransacking our house, peeing on the floor, doing all these things. How could this puppy teach me about business? And so I had that conversation with God, like, hey, you better deliver. So I got done with the walk. I went to the beach. I sat down and I opened up Proverbs 28. And you would think that just the lightning struck and everything was amazing. And I looked at it and I was like, God, how are you going to translate Proverbs 28? And if you've read it, Proverbs 28 has nothing to do with a puppy. But as I started to sit and as I started to ask and as I started to tune in, what God downloaded me today was so incredible. Proverbs 28, the corresponding proverb for the corresponding day, little tiny inchstones, and you'll be amazed at what God was able to translate through this little cavapoo, gray and brown, beautiful eyes that tears up every single thing in our house. So these Ziggy lessons, I believe, will help you in every area of your business. So why don't we get this party started?
Nothing more on my mind. I got to shine, so every day I grind. Work in the morning, work in the evening. We's achieving, cause we believing. It's for certain, we put the work in. We ain't stopped just because it's hurting. Right before your eyes, so it's coming to no surprise. The takeover is televised. Over and over and over again. Make no mistake, we continue to win. Defeat never known, cause I will not lose. They wanna mimic my moves, but can't walk in my shoes.
Oh yeah, the Vibe Room. If you've seen the commercial, what it is it is the live version of the podcast. And I would invite every single one of you guys to come out. We're going to have one in November in Salt Lake City at the Edison House. It's going to be absolutely phenomenal. How could a little puppy named Ziggy teach you every single thing that you need to know in business? Well, I could tell you this. It was you better buckle up, tie up, get a seatbelt, put it on. Couple of station identification things. Number one, buy bling. You could go on the website and check that out. It's the number one selling product that we ever had in our salons when we had them. It adds moisture, strength, and shine, and smells like vacation. Every woman needs a little bit of bling in their life, and I tell you, this thing we could never keep it on the shelves. This is the one thing that we could never keep on the shelves was bling shine serum. Those of you out there listening and watching that have experienced bling shine serum, you know exactly what I'm talking about. The other thing is go on Amazon and buy the book, The Vibe. It's 117 pages. I believe the last time I checked, I wrote it, and it is incredible because it's not the energy that you bring into the room, but it's the way in which people feel when you leave. And the vibe can be constructed by your heart set, which is your belief system, your mindset, which is your intentions, and your skill set, which is your actions. You put them in line. Once you put them in line, you have an irresistible vibe. Then when you look at your culture, your productivity, your process and procedure, innovation, and your ability to adapt immediately, it is curtains. You create a sustainable brand. And I tell you, if you are a hairdresser, a barbershop owner, a barber, or a salon owner, the course, you could click the link. You have to check it out. I tell you guys, it is unreal what we were able to go through. And it's not a theory. We built a multi-million-dollar company on the principles that we're sharing in the course. So check out all of those. That's the station identification. Let's get into how Ziggy can teach you about your business. He is such a cute little guy. And I could tell you this, when my son called me and said, "Hey, Pop, I would like a puppy," I just thought of these amazing slow motion scenes of a boy and his dog, and they would be hanging out, and he would be walking the dog, and he would be smiling, and he would be feeding the dog and smiling, he'd be wrestling with the dog, and the song from Robin Big, "Let me tell you about my best friend," it would be playing, and you would see this slow motion, you see all this greatness, and then bang, reality hit. And what is that reality? Reality is 6:45 in the morning. You know who's walking that dog this morning? It is me. It's my wife. It is poop on the floor. It is pee everywhere. It is chewing up underwear and bras and everything that is possible. And it's, I mean, even to the point of him peeing on a bed. Like we had an Airbnb and they peed on the bed, or he peed on the bed. And it goes from me being loving and wanting to pet this little fluffy puppy to wanting to stick its face in the pee and rub it. And my wife telling me, you know what, that doesn't do anything at all. But I think that it does because I have old school in me and I believe that that works. But PETA will not be invited to my house ever. And they will probably not sponsor the podcast either. But I love this little dog. He is incredible. And he taught me so many business lessons this morning. Well, God did through him. And so watch this. There's a couple things in Proverbs 28. And when I sat down with this, I challenged God. I was like, there's no way that you could teach me through this puppy. But he did. And so this is crazy, right? In verse 1 and 14, true boldness comes from God. All else is justification. See, I had justification right when I heard, my son call me and say, Dad, can we get a dog? It was justification. I was relaxed. I was like, wow, how much joy would it bring to my son? He could have a dog. He'll grow up with a dog. My daughter is going to be leaving the house in like 3 years because she's 15. We have a dog who's 9. Maybe it won't be around for that long. So we need this dog. All this justification. And that boldness about me saying that I needed a puppy, you know what it was? It was from the justification that I had. Listen to this. True boldness comes from God, and all else is justification. So in business, if we want to be bold in our vision, we want to think that we believe in it 100% and it will work no matter what. I would say settle in and let's go to number 2 here, or let's go to where on verse 2, because it talked about this. Doing what we want and then asking God to bless it is different from asking him first, because it will then already be blessed. Let me say it again. Doing what we want and then asking God to bless it is different from asking him what he'll have you to do, because then that thing will already be blessed. You see, sometimes we go into business with boldness saying, this is my idea and I know it'll work, but we didn't check with God first. And see, if we check with God first and we say like this, I want to give this to you. If you want me to move forward on this thing, then you will open the door or you will close the door. You will make it happen, you will open the opportunities, or you will close them. And I want you to make that definitive. But this is a conversation that a lot of us before in business don't want to have, because we have already set our mind and then we're going to ask God to bless it. This was a big thing with my mom. She was always huge on me, making sure that I didn't just go out and do something, then come back and say, God, could you please bless this thing? And that was in verse 2. And so I want you to think about this. Like, this part of it is before you start. So before you start, understand that true boldness comes from God and all else is justification. And then doing what you want and then asking God to bless it. This is before we ever start. Is different from asking him if it's the right thing for you, because then it'll already be blessed. See, there's the next stage of once you have committed. So once you've gone through that part and then God said, hey, I'll lead you, or maybe he told you that he didn't want you to do that and you continued on. I've done this too. Is once you have committed, right, is in verse 3 through 5, it talks about this. Before the new wears off, commit to being good to people. Set the standards and establish the vision. Let me say it again. Before the new wears off, commit to being good to people and set the standards and establish the vision. How does this apply to Ziggy? Honestly, like the new part, the puppy breath, was a place where if I would have set the standards and I would have established the vision of where we were going with this puppy before all these things, while he still had the puppy breath. But I tell you, the puppy breath wore off about a month in, and I wanted to, I didn't know what I was going to do with this dog that was peeing on the floor all the time. And this happens in business before the new wears off. So we get so excited about this new concept, this new thing, all the thing. And we've got to set the principles and set the vision before that wears off, because when it wears off and the real part comes in, sometimes we think, oh man, is this really what I should be doing? Well, if we establish that before the new wears off, it's amazing. And then in verse 6 through 11, it goes into it. And this was hard, is before money gets involved, the principles must be in concrete. Any business that I've ever built and that I've grown, I have to establish the principles before any money gets involved. Otherwise, I have the tendency to say, justification. I'm going to make this, this thing is not in line with the principles, but it'll make me a lot of money, so I could do it. And I tell you, you've got to make those. And I made those decisions very, very early on in our company. Before we sold it, I had one principle that I said that if a person doesn't want to be here, no matter how much they produce, I'm going to allow them to go. And that one decision, one time cost me about $800,000 to $900,000 in about 6 weeks, because I had an individual that I knew didn't want to be there anymore. I asked the question, and when I asked the question, I could tell that they didn't want to be there, and I let them go. And when I let them go, they took their friends with them, and it took $800,000, almost $900,000 in revenue. Bang, gone, just like that in 6 weeks. But I made the decision before money was involved. So it was a very simple decision to be able to make. And when you're not making any money, those decisions are a lot easier. Doing right is a consistent long-term winning strategy. And that's in verse 12, 13, 15, and 17. And that's, once we've committed, we've got to make sure that we commit to doing right, doing right is a consistent long-term winning strategy always in 12, 13, 15, 17, and that's 4 verses. It means it's very important. So here we come to once things start to work. In business, once things start to work, you got to keep your focus and avoid distractions. I learned this from my buddy, Rick Burkholder. He's the vice president of sports medicine and performance for the Kansas City Chiefs. I think we should listen to him. And he said, avoid distractions. That's what Andy Reid talks about in the locker room with the Kansas City Chiefs. In verse 18 and 19 and 20, it talks about this, keeping your focus and avoiding distractions, especially when it starts to work. Because when it starts to work, a lot of times we beat our chest, we step away from our principles, and we start to say, well, I can do anything, because we start to have unjustified, well, maybe it could be justified, but we have hubris that starts to set in, because it worked the last time, it should work this time, and then our ego comes involved, and then that's where the downfall starts to happen. In verse 21 and 22, revisit your principles often and publicly as often as possible. Whether it be with your team, with your customers, once things start to work, revisit the principles that you've got it to start to work on. And then watch this in verse 23 and 24. Be willing to stand on principle. These must be established and communicated. Otherwise, they will be emotional. Be willing to stand on principle. I told you about a decision that I had to make that cost me $800,000 to $900,000 in 6 weeks. We got to be willing to stand on that principle, but these principles must be established and communicated, or they'll be emotional. If they're not established and then communicated, when people get popped on the principle itself, they'll say, oh man, you're targeting me. To be able to avoid that kind of thing, we just have to communicate at the highest level. That's verse 23 and 24. As we bring it home, sustaining that success. Once it hits and it starts to work, then we want to sustain it. In verse 26, it says, reverence your decision of having God lead you in the first place. So where did you take that decision? When we go back to, before you start, we got to ask, is this right for me? And then we reverence that, and we realize that it wasn't about us, that he led it. And if he led it, then it's not our fault. Then we're just a steward of that thing. In verse 26 and 27, this will foster generosity and humility, because you know that it's not about you and your ability, but about your availability to give it to God and allow him to be able to work. In verse 28, as we finish up, is doing right always pays off, although very seldom on your timing. You see, as I sat down and I looked at Proverbs 28, how could a puppy tell me or bring all these things into play, right? So before you start, you got to make that decision. You got to make the decision. Am I going to do this exactly what God has for me, or am I going to do what I want? Once you've committed to it, we've got to look at it and say, like, these are the principles that I'm going to put in play. And before money gets involved, before success gets involved, before anything gets involved, these are my principles. And then once the thing starts to work, and sometimes we're shocked by that as entrepreneurs, once we get over the shock, then we have to look back and not get locked into hubris, the fact that because it worked, it'll work again, but that we reverence the fact of why it worked in the first place. And then the sustaining success, and to be able to sustain it, people say it's easier to obtain than to maintain. But I think it's easier to maintain than it is to sustain. Like, we've got to get to a point where we can continue to have that thing grow, be new, and we'll be able to keep it established. But that's just reverencing the fact that you made the decision to give that decision to God. And once we give it to him, he can freely work with every single thing that we give him. This will foster generosity, it'll foster humility, and it'll help us to realize that doing right will always pay off, but it won't always be in our time. You see, even though that I had no idea what we were getting into with getting a puppy on vacation, I can tell you this. When we had that discussion and my son was so excited about the puppy, I told my wife, let's pray about this. Let's have a time where the family comes together and we pray about this to see if this is what God would have for us. And when we prayed about it, it was amazing because he opened the door and we moved right through it, and it was incredible. And I was thinking, wow, because he blessed this thing and told us that we were it was going to be great, I thought everything would be great, and that is not the case. What God will do is, even though that he blesses that thing and he has you to do it, it's still going to come with circumstances that are going to be out of your control and things that are going to cause you to be challenged. And that's the reason why he says, bring it to me first, and then reverence that. And then once you commit to it, that commitment eliminates the options of anything contrary to that commitment. And this is before the bad stuff starts to happen. So before the new starts to wear off, the puppy breath starts to wear off, that you look and you say, oh my goodness, I love this puppy so much. Because he knows that the peeing and the pooping and the biting things and the doing all the things that he shouldn't do is coming, and it's going to make you mad. And it's going to make you want to maybe, possibly, in theory, give the puppy away to your friend Josie. This is not specific, and it's just a hypothetical. Maybe give it away to your friend Josie, who loves dogs and possibly could need a dog, and it's right down the street, and you could go and visit it. Maybe that's just a hypothetical. Or maybe it's a very specific, and my wife has a friend named Josie. But it's incredible because, God he'll deliver that, but he wants you to establish your principles before the new wears off, before money gets involved, before any of those things happen. And then once success starts to happen, what he wants to do is he wants to remind you the only reason why this thing is successful is because you gave it to me in the first place. And then to be able to sustain that success, just to be able to reverence and set in, have generosity, have humility, and always continue to do the right thing, even when it doesn't return something on your timing. You see, here it is, and I looked at it and I was like, how could this little dog Ziggy teach me every single thing that I needed to know about business? Because I was thinking there was a lot that I've learned in business over the last 30 years and building companies and things like that. And I was wondering if God could deliver this morning. I had that conversation. I was like, Proverbs 28, you better bring it, God. But check this out. And he ran it down like this. And he blew my mind in it. The excitement of the new idea can blind us. So take time and ask if it's his will. Number 2, commitment eliminates options. Once you commit to something, go and don't look back. Number 3, trouble, challenges, and catastrophes are a part of the process and can be the greatest lessons. Number 4, establish principles before the new wears off and the money gets involved. And number 5, once it works, stay humble and remember where you went in the first place to get that guidance and to establish the foundation of the exact success that you are experiencing today. You see, Ziggy, what I want to tell you is I love you, little man. I love you, little fluffy puppy. Even when you pee on the carpet in the exact same place over and over again, and you look me in my eyes while you're doing it. I love you, little man. And I see the amount of joy that it has brought to our family. I see the amount of joy that it has brought to my son, even though he's not up at 6:45 in the morning, walking you, and picking up your poop and feeding you, because that would be mom and dad. Proverbs 28, the corresponding proverb for the corresponding day. God always, always, always delivers at a rate and a level that exceeds my expectation all the time. We went a little bit long on this episode, but the reason why I did is because God was flowing today. Pick up the book, buy this on Amazon, The Vibe. Go ahead and do that. The link is there. Buy Bling. And if you're a hairdresser, a barber, a salon owner, or a barbershop owner, buy the course. Click the link. Honestly, it's incredible. All these principles are in that to be able to take you through. Ziggy, I absolutely love you. Stop peeing on the floor, and I'll stop rubbing your nose in it. My name is Kelly Cardenas, and I'm officially off the hot seat. Peace, love, and soul.
Nothing more on my mind. I got to shine, so every day I grind. Work in the morning, work in the evening. We's achieving, cause we believing. It's for certain, we put the work in. We ain't stopped just because